Welcome to the 4 Levels of Cultural Awareness Facilitation Guide. My name's Kelsey Patton, and I'm an Intercultural Learning Specialist with CILMAR. This video provides background theoretical knowledge on the activity for your reference as the facilitator. You can decide if you'd like to share any of this information with your participants, or if you just prefer to simply facilitate the activity without going in depth with participants on this background theoretical knowledge. All slides are provided to you in the tool, and you can edit as you see fit based on your participant needs. The tool was created originally by Dr. Kris Acheson-Clair, director of CILMAR, adapted from Howell's book, The Empathic Communicator, an article from Kyle on the stages of cultural awareness, and Broadwell's 4 Levels of Competence and 4 Stages of Teaching. The original context for Broadwell's 4 Stages of Competence was to map the progression of how skills are built. This tool applies this psychology to an intercultural competence context, demonstrating the path of growth in cultural awareness. In this video, I'll go over slides 10 through 15 of the slides provided in the tool, right after giving the example of learning to tie your shoes and right before the activity with the case study situations. There are 3 common myths that can be debunked within the realm of building skills, and we'll go over those 3 myths here in common misconceptions, and then evidence-based tenets that debunk the myths. So the first is that it's all about cognition when learning a new skill. But the evidence-based tenet that debunks this is that you can't just learn about skills, but you have to practice them to master them. Another common myth is that we learn by doing, so that everything is experience. The evidence-based tenet that debunks this myth is that practice alone, without preparation or mentorship, is not likely to work well and can even be counterproductive in some cases. The third and final myth we'll go over is that learning is automatically applicable elsewhere. And the evidence-based tenet that debunks this myth is combining experience with reflection better supports transferable skill building. So we'll start with that first myth, that it's all about cognition. Within an intercultural competence context, we know that this is a combination of affective, behavioral, and cognitive elements, attitude, skills, and knowledge. The mistake that many people make is focusing too heavily on the cognitive. So some examples of this might be learning the words and grammar of a language, but not being able to really put it into practice in a conversation. Reading about what another culture is like, but not being prepared for how it truly feels to be immersed in that culture and expected to adapt and do things differently within that culture. And then an engineering example could be learning how machinery works on paper and in textbooks with class content without having the hands-on experience of taking it apart and putting it back together again. Relying too heavily on that cognitive domain, knowledge as opposed to skill results in trying, usually unsuccessfully, to skip the second step in the model. So if we think about riding a bicycle, we could learn the physics of balancing a bike and balancing on the bike, but that won't mean that we can just hop on and take right off. It is a stage-based process, so you can't skip that second stage of the 4 levels of cultural awareness of conscious incompetence. The second myth is that we learn by doing, so everything is just experience. But the evidence-based tenet that debunks this myth is that practice alone without preparation or mentorship through the process isn't likely to work well and can even be counterproductive. So a common mistake is believing that experience is the best teacher. And that's why students or other job seekers often highlight experiences they've had, saying, I studied abroad, I worked on an international research team, I took a course with a global focus. But what employers really want to know is what you took away from those experiences. What kind of person did you become on study abroad? What attitudes and skills did you develop on the international research team? And what did you learn in the course? And how are you applying this? How is it really transforming you? So some examples, again, are a study abroad in a traditional format or participation in a diverse team, such as an engineering team at Purdue. So relying on too much on experience tries to skip both middle developmental stages of those four levels, those that rely on metacognition for growth. Other than musical geniuses who seem to know intuitively, pretty much from birth, how music works and what to do with it, how often do we really see someone learn to play a musical instrument without many years of iteration between direct instruction, practice, experimentation, performance, and feedback? So that whole process is really the what's holistically necessary to make your way through those stages of awareness within a cultural context. And finally, that final myth of learning is automatically applicable elsewhere can be debunked through the evidence-based tenet that combining experience with reflection better supports transferable skill building. We can often think that intercultural competence is a skill to be mastered, and a stage-based approach can make it look like there is an arrival point. But intercultural competence is a lifelong learning journey, and learning how to adapt across difference in one context doesn't necessarily mean we'll automatically reach unconscious competence, that final stage of the levels in a new context with a new set of differences. So, for intercultural competence to become a transferable skill, learning needs to be intentional. Experience plus reflection is what equals transferable learning. This intentionality includes the before, so the briefing, the during, so a level of mindfulness, and the after, the debriefing in any new context or experience. The impacts of combining reflection at all stages of experience are that you are more cognitively prepared for learning, more open, more curious, more knowledgeable, more focused on personalized learning goals. You're more emotionally prepared for learning and have realistic expectations of the experience, are self aware enough to recognize when you need support. You're paying attention to what skills you're gaining and what you need to work on so your effort can be more efficiently applied. You can abstract generalizable takeaways from your concrete experiences, and you can imagine other concrete future applications of those abstract takeaways. So this concludes the video on a deeper dive into the background theoretical knowledge and how practically some of these stages can play out some common myths that are associated with them. So feel free to use this to the extent that it's helpful with your learners, and I hope you enjoyed the video.